Shalom. Once again, all praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High, Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai Ba'asham Raka Kwadash, double honors to the elders and the apostles of the Great Millstone, and salutations to all you sincere Akim. And this is your brother Abawan back again with another video through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai Ba'asham Raka Kwadash. All praises and glory is due. And the title of this video is Leave Blackness, right? Leave quote unquote blackness before you burn, right? Because this terminology, this idea of blackness, really it's a byword and a proverb. So let's get this first and foremost. You go to the book of Deuteronomy and it shows you that so many of our people are still under the curses, right? And still under the deception of Esau Edom, the so-called red man. So let's get this first. So this is the book of Deuteronomy 28 verse 37. And thou shalt be an astonishment, a proverb and a byword among all nations, whither Yahweh shall lead thee. And basically that's what the term black is, right? Because so many of our people, in fact, damn near all of our people outside of the Hebrew Israelites are under this deception of, under this stumbling block of so-called blackness, right? Even now some of the Israelite camps that call themselves, so-called black Hebrew Israelites, okay? And it has already been brought out ad nauseum. It has already been, revealed what exactly this black terminology is. And really it's a insult, okay? It's a mockery, and that's exactly what it means to be a byword and a proverb. So let me get this next precept. And that's why I said, man, that this is a stumbling block, right? A deception that is set up by Esau Edom, the so-called red man, towards our people, okay? Because you have all these different ideologies that Jake is into, and it's always, and the main focus of all of them is always on some black shit, right? Pan-Africanism, it's all about some black shit, the black unconscious. Even in the name you already know what it is, right? FBA, and this other one as well. And this is really where the inspiration for this video came from. So let me get this. This is really where the inspiration for this video came from, right? Zamintis, let's go to that. All right, consortium, here it is. So I was just you're just on the YouTube, right? Just listening to, watching videos, trying to see if I can get some inspiration. And ultimately I found this, right? Zamintis consortium, and there was this and I was listening to this live right here, and the title is The Black Image, the Gender War, Minority Rule, and More, right? So he made it, and I was watching this shit, man, and these dudes are talking about what can we do to improve the so-called black race, right? Which of course black is not a race. We have already read this right here. Black is a byword and a proverb, because who is the person that gave you that identity? Now, of course, these jakes will come out and say, "Oh well, actually, it was I don't know whether it's either Sharpton or Jesse Jackson that came out and said, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud." Let's go to the chat. Alright, let's go to the chat. Let's see if you can source that. All right. So yeah, who is the originator of the term black to refer to you're both Jake and Ham, right? Basically anybody that has rich deep melanin in their skin, right? So let's see what the chat will say, because it's either Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson. And there is a great question. There is no single originator of the term black in reference to sub-Saharan African peoples. It's a concept that evolved over many centuries through different languages and social contexts, but I can trace how it developed and highlights key features and moments in its use. In early use in language and geography, the Latin word Niger, meaning black, is the root for many European terms, right? Because you have Niger, you have Negro, you have even Moreno as well, right? All these different terms, which is why the Moors were called the Moors, right? Which is all these different terms to refer to somebody as black, okay, but I'm looking for more in the modern usage, because we see that the term Niger, got turned into, the N word, right? Nigger now. And I believe that, let me just make sure that, but let me not do that yet. So I wanted to, I'm talking about it now. I'm talking about it now. This is going into other things. I want to see. No, let me do this instead. This isn't what I'm looking for. When did African Americans start calling themselves start calling themselves black, and who originated the term? That's what I'm looking for right there. Oh, here it is. African Americans did not originally call themselves, black. The term black for identity was adopted in the mid to late 1960s, and the people who originated and popularized it were key figures in the Black Power movement. Right, so before the 1960s, African Americans mostly used terms like colored, Negro. This was the standard even among black leaders like MLK and the NAACP, and Afro American used by some intellectuals. Calling someone black in the early 20th century was often considered insulting because white society used it as a negative label. Right, so whenever they want to come out and say that, oh well, the term black was actually a empower or power move that was made by either one of these old black unconscious leaders, right? That's false, because even before, as you can clearly see in the history, right? Before Jake in Babylon started calling themselves black, you already had so many people, right, using the term black derogatorily. What do you think a nigger is, right? Nigger is just another language's way of saying black, okay? But yet it's still a slur, right? And it's still a dehumanizing term, the same way black is. But you have so many jakes that lean on this whole identity of black and hold on to it tightly. And of course, you can go and get the definition of the word, right? And see where it comes from. So let's do that real quick, because we've already done this before. It has been done ad nauseum. So right, let's get the definition of the word black, and it's the usual same thing: devoid of light, absorbing all light, and so on and so forth, right? So this is the etymology of the word black: absolutely dark, absorbing all light, of the color of soot or coal, reconstructed to be from Proto-Germanic blackers, burned, source also from the Norse blacker, which is dark, from the black, Swedish black ink, Dutchin blacken, to burn. So the whole European languages going into burn, dark, scorch, that kind of thing, right? So that's the etymology for the word black. Now let's go into the definition. Yes, you'll see the same definitions as well, devoid of light, so on and so forth, right? And really, that's what let's go to that. That should be Merriam-Webster. This is it right here. Okay, just a quick one. So yeah, black, having the very dark color of the night sky, or eyes, pupils of the color black, usually black, of relating to the various population groups of especially African ancestry, often considered as having dark pigmentation of the skin, but in fact having a wide range of skin colors, of relating to black people, and often especially to African American people or their culture, right there. And here it is right here. So now we're getting to the actual definitions that basically are associated with the word, right? Dirty or soiled, characterized by the absence of light, thoroughly sinister or evil, of course, old fashioned, archaic, wicked, right? Indicative of condemnation or discredit, okay? Connected with or invoking the supernatural, and especially the devil. And that's something that our people can't understand, because this is a term, this ideology of black is a byword and a it's a stumbling block to Jake, okay, because Jake likes to identify with this term, right? Like to identify as being black, oh, um, black this, black that, and black your, and blackity black and black it, right? But at the end of the day, like I said, it is a byword and it is a proverb, okay. Now let's go to this as well because this really is my inspiration for this video. I learned a new black unconscious identity, which is a Zamintist or Zamintism. Here it is. So let's go to this, and it's just, I know it's just a new thing that just came up So let's get this. So this is it right here. You're not going really, and I tried asking the chat, right, but the chat doesn't even know about this. So that shows that there's some information that even Chat GPT doesn't really know about. Okay, so yeah, the Zamint. So yeah, this is right. This is it. Right, it's right here. A Zamint is a human that is of pure black race. Once again, you see this term of black, right? And there is no, okay, let's say that again. There is no black race on the planet because look at it logically, right? We know that the so-called white race, the same way it's a so-called, the so-called white race, which are the Edomites, is an invented term because there is no white race. Okay, so the so-called whites are Edomites, and the white race is an invented racial identity that was in the late 1600s in Virginia, right? Based on the miscegenation laws, and in order to basically consolidate power to Esau Edom by putting their term of white on all the Edomites, right? And basically anywhere that had a lighter complexion of skin or lacked melanin, regardless of their actual nationality, right? Because you have a lot of so-called white people that are straight up Arabs, even Hamites as well, right? You go into anyway. Let's stay on topic, right? So it goes without saying that the same case applies for the so-called black, right, race. Okay, it is a social construct, right? Because you have different, and this is the funny thing right here, because these guys will come out and still talk about how, oh well, Africa has the most diverse genetic makeup, right? So you have different types of peoples living in Africa with different types of genetics and so on and so forth, right? But we are all one black race. 800 or so million so-called Negroes, right? 800 and so million so-called black people, but are all one race, and it shows you really the ridiculousness of it. And this actually comes from the out of Africa, theory from Esau Edom, where basically every single black person is an African, regardless of wherever in the world you find them. So let's do this as well. And it shows you that these black unconscious Negroes don't know what they're talking about. Let's do this as well. So we'll do Melanesians, right? We'll do what they call that shit again? What they call it again? Indigenous, yeah. Indigenous Tasmanians. Indigenous Tasmanians. I will do Papua New Guineans, right? So that's it right here. So these are, I just clicked in and just typed in three people groups that are not from Africa, right? They are from Asia, okay. And the one that is actually crazy is the indigenous Tasmanians. So this is it right here, okay. So basically, what happened is that Esau Edom actually completed a genocide of the Tasmanians, okay, the indigenous Tasmanians, which is from the island of Tasmania. And this is what the last Tasmanians look like, okay. Let's just try and zoom into this. So you see right here, this is what the last Tasmanians look like, okay. And that's like these are so-called black people, right? But they're not Jake, okay, because the Tasmanians are Japheth, okay. Let's go into let's go into another one, right? Once again, the Papua New Guineans, okay. These are not Jake once again, right? Because the Papua New Guineans, right, they are, and these are them right here, and they look like so-called These guys so-called black people, right? But Papua New Guinea is in Asia, and Guinea, right, is another term for black. So let's go and do that as well. Guinea is another term for black, which is why when the Italians first came to, and I did a video on this, when the Italians first came to America, they were calling them Guineas, right? Especially the Sicilians, and that's because of how dark they were. And a lot of people don't realize how dark some of these Mediterranean Europeans actually get. So let's do this as well, right? Sicilians. A lot of people don't realize how dark some of these Mediterranean Europeans can actually get. So let me see. Let's see. Let's see. And that's why they was called Guineas, because basically, and that's why for the longest time, right, a lot of these Mediterranean Europeans, your Spanish, your Italians, even Greeks as well, Cyprus and all these South Mediterranean European countries were not considered what they call that again. They are not considered whites. Okay, let's do dark skinned Sicilians. And the reason why we have to do that is because you know how Esau is, man. If you type in any race, especially any country, especially in Europe, they'll make sure to always put um the lightest of them. That's the word I was looking for. So let's make sure that none of these are actually mixed. So you see this one right here, man, and you see the hair color, right? But yeah, they actually get pretty dark. So I don't want to open this one because this is TikTok. I don't know why these things are. I don't know why this thing is what's what I'm looking for. It's always whenever you try to click on it and show it, it's just yeah, it's not as big as it's supposed to be. So you have all these South Mediterranean peoples that they get really dark. Okay, some of them straight up look like light skinned jakes or even mixed jakes because they are. I don't mean mixed as in their parent is so called black or their and one of their parents is so called, but I mean like the mixing has happened all the way going back in history, right? That's why I think the Apostle Taha was even doing a video on it, either the Apostle Taha or the Apostle Gabar. And so like I can't remember that when he was doing one of his videos, we were doing one of his videos, and he was basically going into it. Yeah, it was the Apostle Taha, and he was talking about a movie where they were basically talking about that, saying about how the Italians actually come from Negroes, right? Oh, he shot that guy because they called him a nigger, right? That kind of thing. And well, basically, what I'm trying to say with this is that Jake doesn't understand. Jake doesn't understand that it's that there's no such thing as a so-called black race because initially, right, before the birth of Esau Edom, the whole world was black. Okay, the whole world had black skin, so it can't be a so-called black race. Okay, because there are different nations and different groups of dark-skinned people. Even the native Hawaiians used to be dark-skinned. Gad used to be dark-skinned. The Moabites, the Ammonites, Chinese, Japanese, and so on and so forth. Chinese, Japanese, Korean, they used to be dark-skinned as well, right? All these nations used to be dark-skinned, and these are the Melanesians. Once again, another, it's not even a Asian country, it's an Australian country, right? The Aboriginal Australoid, not Australoid, but yeah, the Aboriginal Australians used to be very dark-skinned. It's the same with Tasmania. I believe Tasmania is also a island on around Australia as well. You can even go into some of the darker skinned Asians like the Filipinos, right, with the Negritos, and even some of the darker skinned Indonesian tribes, right, things like that. And these are all groups of dark skinned people that are not in Africa. Now the question now be, are they black too, right? Technically, according to Esau's ridiculous ass, and that's where the ideology comes from, this stupidity of blackness, right? From let's go back to the chat because I think the chat even went into this, right? That's where the ideology of blackness comes. Really, it's pseudo scientific really being black is a pseudo scientific ideology, right? A pseudo scientific race term. So yeah, philosophical and racial classification in early modern Europe. The concept of dividing humanity into quote unquote races based on physical traits like skin color emerged early in modern Europe. So that's where it actually came from, and it's not something that actually works, because it's a dumbass classification. Okay, it's not efficient, right? Which is why you see that, the term of who gets to be black and who gets to be white is always being changed and ratified, right? The Italians weren't originally white, now they are. Mexicans, they pretty soon man Esau will start saying that the Mexicans are white too, right? Even though they are jakes, that kind of thing, right? Anyway, let's keep going into it. Francois Benoit is an important figure here. In his work A New Division of the Earth, he proposed race that included people of Africa south of the Sahara, describing them as having smooth black skin. And this is it right here. Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, a German anthropologist in the late 18th century, and they didn't mention he was an Edomite supremacist racist piece of shit. But yeah, let's keep going into it. Classified humans into varieties. His On the Natural Variety of Mankind, in his 1795 edition, he used the term Ethiopian to refer to what is considered the black race. The concept of Negroid as a racial category comes from later scientific racism. Blumenbach's categorization was foundational to these ideas, right? So even the term of being a Negro, a Negroid, or that all these South-Saharan, right? Because it's not Sub-Saharan, at least Saharan African countries or African nations or African peoples, so-called African peoples, are all black peoples, right? And they're all part of the same black race. Is, like I said, pseudoscientific racism, right? Or pseudoscientific racist bullshit, okay? Because as the scriptures say, let's get that preset. The Most High Yahweh Basham Yahushai had made a separation between the children of Israel. Let's get that. 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 All right. So okay, I just remembered. A dog shall not wag. A dog shall not wag his tongue, or something like that. Let's get that. Dog and tongue. So yeah, it is. So this is the book of Exodus 11 verse 7. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue, right? Against man or beast, right? And of course that dog is referring to Esau, Edom, the so-called red man. That he may know how Yahweh does put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And the Egyptians, of course, referring to not only of course the scriptures is manifold, right? So the Egyptians initially referring to the actual Egyptians, which are another black so-called black group of people, right? Because there is no such thing as the black race. And the Israelites, which are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians. So we know that the Most High Yahweh Sham Yahushai had made a difference between these nations, okay, between these peoples, okay. So the idea of us being all just one big Negro, just one big group of black people is completely off. So let's go back to this. Like I said, this is the inspiration for this video, the idea of Zamintism. So yeah, a Zamint is a human that is of a pure black race and exhibits non-Caucasian figures, including type 4 or 3 hair textures, dark brown or light skinned, full lips and wider noses. You can still be a Zamint even if you don't have some of these features. This is just a point of reference to educate individuals on what the Zamint identity is. So another one right here. Zamint, a black Nazi or black supremacy, basically, right? So classic Esau Edom vilification right here. So that's basically what that is going into. And no, we're not and this, like I said, this is another ideology in the black unconscious movement right here. So no, right, we are not all one freaking race. We're not all so-called black people, all right. That's just completely going off, and that's why I said, man, leave the black community before you burn, okay? Because in a black community it is the congregation of the dead, all right. It is utter darkness. So let me get this preset. That should be, and it's time to get out of it's time to get out of these it's time to wake out of sleep, and time to get out of these ridiculous ideologies. So Isaiah 60 verse 1, arise, shine, For thy light is come, and the glory of Yahweh is risen upon thee. Alright, time to wake up and come into the truth. Time to discard all these foolish identities and these foolish terminologies and these bywords and proverbs that have been put upon you by your enemy. Isaiah 60 verse 2, for behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But Yahweh shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And the darkness, of course, is the lack of understanding. The darkness is the void of light. Basically, the truth and the spirit and understanding of the Most High Yahweh Basham Yahushai is not on you. Okay, that's why the scriptures say, him that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead, which is exactly where you jakes that are into this black identity, right? That's exactly where you are. You are still out here believing that there is one black race and all black people are together in and bullshit like that, be one another bullshit. You're still out here believing in that nonsense, right? Once again, which is a stumbling block for our people, okay, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians. Leave the black community before you burn. So with that, I'll end the video right there. Once again, all praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High Yahweh Basham Yahushai Basham Rakakwadash Wa Abad Babal Shalom. Also, like I meant to say, leave the black identity, not leave the black community. Shalom.